You wake up naked, scared, and surrounded by convicted men. No security guards, no privacy, no chance to defend yourself. This is how life begins for many women who are transferred to a men's prison. In this video, I show you the most horrific cases: rape, murder, organized cover-ups, and why these conditions are still a reality in some countries. Imagine you are arrested. Not because you ran a major cartel, but perhaps because you were caught as a courier, a mistress, or simply the wrong person in the wrong place. And instead of being taken to a women's prison, you are suddenly told, there's no room. She's going to the men's prison. As unbelievable as it sounds, this is exactly what happens. Time and time again, women end up in men's prisons not because they belong there, but because the system treats them like a mistake. In Latin America, but also in Asia and Eastern Europe, there are documented cases of women simply being shoved into overcrowded prisons, into blocks that were never intended for them. The result? Total vulnerability. Because these places are not neutral institutions. They are jungles with their own rules, their own hierarchies, and a single currency: violence. An example: in Honduras in 2012, a group of women were transferred to a men's prison because a fire had raged in the official women's prisons. They were placed in cells controlled by gangs. The guards looked the other way, but the men did not. Within a few days, several of the women had disappeared, officially untraceable, but in reality at the mercy of a system that never saw them as prisoners, but as objects. And this is not an isolated case. In Mexico, Guatemala, and even in some Eastern European countries, it happens time and time again. If there is no functioning women's prison, a woman is simply pushed in. No plan, no protection, no rules. The authorities then refer to it as a temporary solution. But for the women affected, it means a life that hangs in the balance every day from the moment they are admitted. You are like a rose in concrete, a rare sight, but surrounded by thorns just waiting to tear you apart. Historically, this pattern has a long tradition. Back in the 1970s, when women in Colombia were exposed as accomplices in drug deals, they were sent to the same facilities as the men. And even in the US, there are documented cases of women being placed in men's prisons on a temporary basis until a place became available. For those affected, this meant entering a world that was never meant for them, a world in which they didn't even have an identity. The tragedy is that these women become invisible. Their stories hardly ever appear in reports. Men in men's prisons, that's everyday life. Women in men's prisons, that's a mistake the system prefers to keep quiet about. But that's precisely why it shows so starkly how little value the lives of these women have in the shadow of prison walls. Because as soon as the gates close behind them, they are no longer human beings. They are a problem, to be locked away. Men's prisons do not function like normal places. They are closed ecosystems with clear laws, except that these laws are not found in the penal code, but in the Código de la Cárcel, the unwritten rules of the inmates. Here, strength is everything. Violence is currency, and respect is the only insurance you have. New arrivals are immediately tested. Who are you? Who do you belong to? Can you be broken? For a woman thrown into this system, this means that she immediately becomes the center of attention and at the same time a target. Imagine an aquarium into which a single colorful fish is suddenly placed. All eyes are on it, and everyone knows that it won't survive for long. Prison hierarchies are brutally clear. At the top are the capos, or leaders, who often have connections to cartels or gangs. Below them are their soldados, who provide protection and violence. At the very bottom are the muñecos, the weak, who have no one and are exploited for cigarettes, drugs, or simply out of boredom. A woman almost automatically ends up at the bottom, not because she is weak, but because the system pins her there. She has no clan, no gang, no support. In an environment where every man fights for territory, power, and prey, she immediately becomes a resource, something to be claimed, controlled, and passed on. And that is precisely the point that many outsiders underestimate. Men's prisons are not just about punishment, they are about possession. A cell phone, a place to sleep, a bar of soap, everything has a price. A woman? Perversely, her value is even higher. Reports from Central America show that women in men's cells are often used as bargaining chips. Protection from a gang boss may mean a roof over your head, but it also means dependence. From that moment on, you belong to someone else. You are no longer yourself, but a currency, a pawn. And this is precisely where the deadly trap lies. Those who do not join a gang are left to their own devices. Those who do join lose their freedom in a different way. It's like a game of chess in which the woman never becomes queen. She's always just a pawn to be sacrificed when the going gets tough. Some guards claim they organize special protection. In reality, it is often just a euphemism for isolation. Small cells without contact, where women exist like ghosts for years. Others are signs tacitly tolerated by the guards, who do not interfere as long as there is no threat of rebellion. And while their families outside believe they are simply in prison, they are fighting for their daily survival inside. No bars, no walls protect them. On the contrary, it is precisely these walls that ensure that no one ever finds out what happens behind them. Officially, the authorities say we are protecting them. In reality, this means solitary confinement. For days, weeks, months. When a woman is sent to a men's prison, the authorities often claim that they can only guarantee her safety by locking her in a solitary cell. No fellow inmates, no contact, sometimes not even sunlight. One cell, 4 walls, a small window that may never be opened. What sounds like protection is in fact another form of punishment. Psychologists call it sensory deprivation. Isolation that slowly eats away at the brain. Voices become screams in your head. Silence becomes torture. And every hour in that cell pushes the line between reality and insanity further apart. In Latin America, there are documented cases of women in men's prisons being held in this protective custody not for days or weeks, but for years. In El Salvador, a young woman convicted of gang membership was held in solitary confinement for 14 months, officially for her own good. When she was released, she could barely speak. She had hallucinations and reacted with panic at every noise. There have been similar cases in the US. Amnesty International reported on women who, after being sexually assaulted by guards or fellow inmates, were not transferred to secure facilities, but to solitary confinement. Officially, this was to protect them from further attacks. Unofficially, it was to silence the problem. The logic is perverse. Instead of changing the system or providing real security, women are simply made invisible, locked in a cage within a cage. And that is precisely what makes this protection deadly. After all, who can survive sitting in an empty room 23 hours a day, without conversation, without social contact, without anything except their own thoughts? Many women develop depression and anxiety disorders, and some resort to razor blades if they can find them. Suicide is not uncommon, and the files simply state, death in custody. No further explanation. But there's also the other side, women who are not placed in isolation, but remain in the normal men's blocks. They too rarely survive, because there is no cell to protect them. Every night is a risk. Every guard who leaves the door open is a potential death sentence. This creates a cruel paradox. Either isolation until madness, or freedom and the block that turns into a nightmare. Women in men's prisons are thus trapped with no way out. Protection means destruction, and lack of protection means even faster ruin. No matter how you look at it, the system itself ensures that they do not survive. If these insights shock you, wait until you see what's coming next. We still have some dark truths ahead of us, so click like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the next revelations. Imagine you are a woman in a prison that was actually built for men, where brute force and demonstrations of power are the law of the land. Your body suddenly counts for more than your voice, more than your rights, even more than your survival. In men's prisons, everything is a question of hierarchy. Food, protection, a bed without bloodstains, nothing can be taken for granted. And women who end up here are almost immediately degraded to commodities. It is not uncommon for fellow inmates to make it clear to them, your body is your only currency. This is not a metaphor. It is a bitter reality. Women who refuse to make deals risk beatings, isolation, or even death. Those who submit become part of a system of exploitation and dependency from which there is no escape. And while guards often turn a blind eye or are even part of the system themselves, these women lose their humanity piece by piece. What was a person on the outside, a daughter, mother, sister, is reduced to a single label on the inside, an object. Surviving in a men's prison when you are a woman means one thing. You have to follow rules you never chose. Rules that are not written on paper, but on skin, blood, and fear. Women who end up in this hell quickly realize that there are no second chances here. The first mistake determines whether you end up as a victim or whether you can at least retain a small spark of control. The first rule: find protection immediately. Staying alone is not an option. A woman with no allegiance is considered fair game. This means she will be passed from cell to cell until there is nothing left of her. So many join a gang or look for a so-called protector, usually a high-ranking inmate who, in exchange for loyalty and services, ensures that others do not touch them. But protection never means freedom. Protection means new dependence. The second rule: remain invisible. Women who try to appear strong and rebellious are tested immediately. One glance too many, one wrong word, and the whole cell knows this one must be broken. So many learn to lower their gaze, to appear small and inconspicuous. Because in prison, invisibility is a survival strategy. The third rule: your body does not belong to you. That sounds brutal, but it's the truth. Women repeatedly report that they are viewed like prey in men's prisons. Whether by inmates or guards, their bodies become a battlefield where power is demonstrated. Some try to make themselves as unattractive as possible. They cut their hair, gain weight, or lose weight on purpose. Others go even further. They hurt themselves just to appear useless. That's not a life. It's pure survival in a state of emergency. The fourth rule: don't trust anyone. Friendships in prison are rarely honest. Everything is based on deals. If someone gives you a cigarette, it's because they want to use you for something else later. And women who don't learn this lesson quickly pay a high price. But all these rules have one thing in common. The price is always your humanity. You survive, yes, but you will never be the same person you were before you went behind bars. And that is the core of this grim truth. Women who end up in men's prisons are not just fighting for survival. They are fighting against constant dehumanization. Every night they close their eyes and are still breathing in the morning is a small victory, but at the same time, it's another step in a game they can never win. Women who end up in men's prisons rarely survive unscathed. Even if they come out alive, they bear scars: physical, psychological, and social. The physical level is immediately apparent. Men's prisons are not built for women. There are no safe showers, no hygiene products, and no medical care. Even more destructive is the psychological level. Women report feeling watched and threatened around the clock. For many, the only option is solitary confinement, a cage within a cage. But even that is no salvation, just another form of torture. Isolation means hallucinations, depression, and panic attacks. Protection becomes destruction. And then there is the social level. Those who survive are hardly the same person when they get out. Many women lose their children, their families, their identity. They are considered broken, stigmatized, excluded. Even international organizations such as Amnesty and Human Rights Watch repeatedly document that these women simply disappear from the system. The truth is harsh. Women are not meant to be in men's prisons. There are flaws in the system, and this flaw almost always costs them their dignity, if not their lives. That was just a fraction of what really happens behind bars. If you want to dive deeper into this world, click on the playlist now. It will take you straight there. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything.